Bienvenue, everyone. Welcome to the Story of Perfume. AFUSA is the largest Alliance Française network in the world, helping 25,000 learners of French each year learn French, live French, and love French. And please take a look at our video explaining why. So I am thrilled as chair of cultural offerings for AFU USA to invite you to go to www.afusa.org and take a look at some of our incredible programming coming up. The Last Fleet of New France, French-American History, a wonderful book, A Season in the Other Southern France, French Cinematheque, which we are so excited about, with Peter de Bruges of Variety Magazine heading the conversation. And again, Adrian Leeds is back, and many, many programs that you'll be sure to enjoy in the coming months. A few logistics. Please stay on mute during the presentation. Stay on speaker view. Place all your questions, if you would, in the chat, and we'll address them at the end of the talk. And if you have any technical issues, just sign out and then sign back in with the original Zoom link. This event is being recorded for the AFUSA YouTube channel, and the total runtime is 1 hour. We are so excited today to introduce Élisabeth de Feydeau, the author of The Story of Perfume, to discuss this gem of a book. Élisabeth is a PhD in the history of perfume from the University of Paris-Sorbonne. She teaches at the Versailles School of Perfumers and is a cultural advisor to leading luxury brands, including Christian Dior, Thierry Mugler, Chanel, Guerlain, and Lancaster. Author of several books, including The Herbarium of Marie Antoinette and the novel A Scented Palace, both of which have been translated into several languages. To lead the discussion with Élisabeth, we are equally as thrilled to welcome Rebeca de la Piedra, a renowned Mexican fragrance expert with an illustrious career spanning over 40 years. Rebeca started her fragrance journey in Paris, France, where she honed her skills in the world of fragrance. She has worked for multinational fragrance companies in France, the USA, and Mexico City. Her expertise encompasses fragrance evaluation, sales, and marketing, and her extensive knowledge has made her a respected figure in the industry. So welcome to everyone. This was a much anticipated event, and we're thrilled to have you both with us.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here. And maybe we can put the cover of this beautiful book to start our interview. Okay. So, Élisabeth, I was thrilled to be invited to this interview where I really found many things that I didn't know about perfumery, despite my long career. And you mentioned some fragrances that are some of the fragrances that are very iconic, and we're going to go through those topics during this interview. But you wrote sentences that are quite impactful in your introduction. The first one is fragrance makes us human, which is true. The other one is that fragrances always tell a story, which is also very true. The third one is that fragrances make hearts sing and also reconcile souls. So thank you for that introduction, because it's everything about the impact of fragrances in our lives. And I would really love to hear from you about your relationship with the fragrance world. How did that start in your life?
It started quite as I was young, but I was not conscious about that. As you can understand, I am passionate about perfumes and history. And I wanted always to approach the perfume history according to the emotion that perfumes were triggering off. To me, they are linked to 7 historical mainstream trends: well-being, echo of oneself, happiness, seduction, glamour, eternal alliance between perfume and fashion, luxury and modernity. So to me, it's not so important to stay in the chronology, but I prefer always to write going into timeless emotion. So this is what is very important to me with a perfume. Perfume is first happiness and memory. I mean it's emotion.
I love that you said timeless emotion because it's true. And to write this book, Élisabeth, what inspired you to do it? And I saw so many beautiful images and history in this book related to perfumes. So what inspired you? And really, how long did it take you to write it? How many people did you interview? How many books did you have to read? And how many people did you talk to in order to create this beautiful and artistic book?
Yeah, a lot, as you can imagine, but it starts before the idea of the perfume of the book, because as you said during the introduction, I have a PhD. I studied at Paris Sorbonne University, and I obtained my doctorate in contemporary history. And I have chosen a title for my thesis, which was about the French perfume industry. And then I wrote many books about perfumery. So, of course, I met a lot of people, perfumers, artists. I went to the archives during years and years. And when the publisher asked me for this book, it takes me more than 1 year. I have to say 2 years, but as you can understand, it starts before. It's not only during 2 years that I can study all about what is written in the book. It takes me years before, but not only for this book. It was, you see, it's experience. It's more my experience.
And what is very interesting that you say that it didn't only take 2 years, but it started way before. I think that once you finish reading it, the impact that this book is having in the industry and also the impact of the people that are reading it will also be timeless. So that's really nice.
Yeah, you're nice. You're so nice. I think to me, this book must deal with the global history of perfume from the origins to the present day. And I wanted it to be an easy to read book, to get into the knowledge of perfume. I write this book as a sort of front door, a gateway to perfumery. You see, we don't need to have a PhD in history to read this book. It's just the envy to understand more about perfumes and about ourselves. Because perfume is always telling a story, and the first story is our story. Because what we want to wear as perfume is telling us so many things about what we are, what we live, what we want. That's very important.
Going to the history of perfume that you just mentioned, I don't know if everybody in this meeting or this call or interview knows what the name perfume, the word perfume means, and the meaning is through smoke, perfumum. Okay, so I think that was something interesting for all of us to know. And you also talk about 3 different functions that fragrance have besides telling a story and making us special is really, it plays a role in rituals, in legends, and in beliefs. So
Yes.
if we go back in the history, can you tell us a little bit about the birthplace? I know it's more than 2,000 or 3,000 years, which is like amazing. And the ancient civilizations used fragrances with a purpose, right? It went from sacred to something profane. It was used for purification and remedy. So can you tell us a little bit about those civilizations? Because that's so interesting how the story of perfume began many years ago.
Oh, yes. The earliest evidence of perfume use dates back to the Bronze Age. In Mesopotamia and the Levant, there are even signs that its history goes as far back as the Neolithic period. Stone and pottery containers dating back to the 4th millennium before our era were uncovered during archaeological excavations in Iran, and it is believed that perfume was invented in the East, then migrated to ancient Egypt, which helped to establish perfume as a much loved commodity. So we can say that perfume has been used for various reasons, including for its therapeutic properties, which are especially effective during periods of epidemics. The first perfumers, who were priests, were also doctors. And also perfume was used medicinally and was in fact the best anti-plague agent available. As such, from antiquity to today, remember the COVID, and perfume was regarded for its sacred importance, in therapeutic qualities, and the luxury, of course, pleasures that it provided, and also seduction. So perfumes takes us on a journey. And so let's travel together through time and the book.
Can we go to the next slide, please? So, of course, this is what you mentioned about the Bronze Age and Mesopotamia.
Yes.
And how the science in history goes so far back, in pottery, containers,
Yes.
and different uses. I also read that, some women use it in gloves as well, and to really, purify themselves and find new remedies. And in the next slide, it talks a little bit more about the Greek and Latin civilizations. So there, what else can these two civilizations have in common? Or how do you see these civilizations impact the world of fragrance today, Élisabeth?
Yeah, Egypt was, in a way, Egypt is the birthplace of perfume, because we can find in Egypt the first written traces of the art of perfume. For example, the Kifi. Kifi is the first perfume of which we know the recipe. We are around minus 4,000 years before Jesus Christ. And the word perfume comes from the Latin expression perfumum. Perfume has a sacred origin through the smoke. And the Kifi is this perfume which is said to be twice good, made by priests in order to be burned and honor the gods. And the Kifi became a panacea in the Greek and Latin civilizations, which inherited from the knowledge of the Egyptian perfumery. And also Greek and Latin used perfume for the same rules. But of course, you have some differences, but always perfume was used to purify, for the sacred role, to perfume at the perfume of Olympus, the Mount Olympus. And the most change was during the Roman Empire, because we have more and more a secular use during the Roman times, because the Roman Empire placed the greatest importance of all on cosmetics and perfumes, but not so much for the rituals, for the sacred rituals, but more for the profane pleasure and luxury. So it was the main difference between the Latin civilizations and the Greek and Egyptian civilizations.
That is really interesting to really compare how each civilization perceived and used fragrances since then, Élisabeth. Very interesting. Today, I am sure that fragrances also play a very important role in our lives. Since
Yes.
we wake up until we go to bed, and even sleeping, sometimes we smell, you know, things in the night of products we have used in our clothes and in our personal care routines. So you also talk a lot about the impact on today's life with love, with desire. And you also mentioned that it's a weapon of seduction. So
Yes.
it's something very subtle, but at the same time, very impactful in humans' lives. And how, you know, is this weapon of seduction used through smell in your perception, and how you describe it in your book?
You know, the first seduction of a perfume was during the Age of Bronze, because when the ancient people burnt fragrant resins, fragrant woods, to honor and to pay homage to the gods, they wanted first to seduce the gods, because when something was wrong on earth, ancient people thought that it was because the gods were angry, were upset. And if the gods were upset, it was because they were hungry. And because they are invisible, ancient people, imagined to nourish them with fragrant smoke. You understand what I mean? So
Yes.
It was a way to seduction. It was a way to seduce the gods, because ancient people wanted that the gods became more nice with them. And so they had to seduce them with fragrance smoke. And then the cleavage between perfume is always a question of cleavage. The first one is the good smell of the gods and the bad smells of the humanity, of humans. Then we have the good smells of rich people and bad smell of poor people. And we have the good smell of virtue and bad smell of sins. And also we want always to be another. We want to change ourselves with a perfume. We want to change our condition. And this is the first step of seduction. Seduction, the word seduction is coming from a Latin etymology. It means seducere. That means to drive yourself to another place. And it starts with your own smell, with your own scent, because you change of mood, you change of state of mind. And then you
Seducere.
seduce. If you change yourself, you can seduce. Nature is not seducing. You have to be different. And perfume is the first step to be different.
Yes, and I think in our day-to-day lives, we are always looking to seduce in a way.
Exactly.
You know, the people we
Exactly.
work with, our partner, our lives, and even ourselves. You know, when we know that we smell good and that we are projecting through smell an emotion, I think that's very important for every human being. So that's
Exactly.
seducere. I will not forget that word. And
Seduction is always starting with yourself.
yes, always starting with yourself, then you can seduce others.
Yeah. And perfume is the best way to change of mood.
Also, yes, to change the mood and to communicate and to really transmit a lot of it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the first role of a perfume, as you can understand, is to communicate with the gods, to reunify the earth of human with the heaven of the divinity. So it's always it's a religion. You see, it's a religion. A perfume. It's a way to be with the others.
And I relate it also to escapism a little bit. I know we want to be okay with ourselves, but I know that when we go to a beautiful garden or we go to a forest or we go to the beach for vacation,
Yes,
others of nature also impact our lives because they transmit things to us that we are looking for when we go out of the city or when we go to a beautiful trip and everything has a smell. And
yes,
I also, know that the other act also helps us identify danger. As you said, there's a smell of, you mentioned rich and poor people. There's a smell of a clean house or maybe a house that has not been opened, a house that we go to see our grandparents and a house where like there's a baby and the smell, it just transmits so much. And how do you think that our other nose and our smell helps us also on this part, that it's so important that it helps us to identify danger? And I think that's also related to how the fragrances were used before or the perfumes, right?
yes, right. The first rule of our sense of smell was to indicate
Change the light, I'm
the
sorry.
danger.
Thank you.
It was the first rule to indicate the danger and for the reproduction. And exactly as for the animal today, still today, of course, today it's a little different for the human, but in fact, we have always this expression, I don't smell it, it stinks, you see, it indicates the first rule of the sense of smell. And also, when we register a smell, we register it always with the sensation, physical sensation. That's why we cannot say that there are truths in perfumery, because if you have a delicate and nice sensation, feelings, when you register the smell, you will like the smell. But if it's very bad for you, you will not like it. You see, it's always linked to your emotions, because the sense of smell is directly linked to the most ancient part of your brain, called the limbic brain. I have not exactly cerveau limbique in French.
Mm-hmm.
And which is the place of emotions, where you register all your emotions. And also that's why we have the expression La Petite Madeleine de Proust in French, because the sense of smell and the sense of taste is a very, very strong place of our memory, used in medicine, used as a medicine for people who don't have any memory of amnesic people, for example. So it's very strong. It's you cannot control it, and it's deep of pleasure or emotions. That's the truth.
Yes. Can you go to the next slide, please? Where we will be able to see this image of this lady,
Yes.
you know, really making herself beautiful, looking herself in the mirror, and just what you are referring to, Élisabeth. And also, you know, the flowers, I know to make 1 kilo of, you know, rose essence, we need a lot of petals. So it's also very emotional, as you were mentioning, and it really has to do a lot with our lives. But, you know, since we have been through this, you know, maybe past century, we also see a lot of pioneers, you know, and a lot of iconic names. I saw in your book, and I'm sure we all know these very big names like Guerlain, Lancôme, Coty, Chanel, or even, you know, fragrances like Shalimar. Can you tell us a little bit more how these fragrances or how this name became so iconic in our industry? And we don't only see them in fragrances, we also see them in fashion. We see them in cosmetics, but where they really pioneered, you know, like the icon perfumer of fashion was Guerlain, Lieu, and Coty, and also Chanel No. 5 with this, you know, Marilyn Monroe, who mentioned just a few drops of Chanel. That's all she needed.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Okay.
Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about, you know, these fragrances, Shalimar, the bottle it has that was created for an exhibition, on these iconic fragrances and how they used some of the celebrities, and also are very strong in fashion today. And they have been there since, you know, the past century, and they become more and more impactful in the fashion and beauty industry.
You know, I will start with Guerlain. Guerlain is not
Yes.
only the name of a brand, it is a family name, and it's very important because almost 2 centuries have passed and many perfumes have been created since the day in 1828 when expert nose and businessman Père François Pascal Guerlain decided to follow his convictions and find success. After all, woman of letters Madame de Staël had predicted that modern perfumery is a meeting point of fashion, chemistry, and business. And also, Pierre-François Pascal Guerlain founded one of the most important and elegant brands of the perfumery. He was a man behind the Eau de Cologne Impériale because in 1853, he became Her Majesty's official perfumer, the official perfumer of the Empress Eugenia, the wife of the Emperor Napoleon I. And then his sons and grandsons continued his success story until our days. And that is absolutely fantastic because you see, this Eau de Cologne Impériale created in 1853, you can still buy it in a shop of Guerlain. And the same with Shalimar. Shalimar was created in 1925 as a tribute of this beautiful Indian legend, and and also it's a fresh and light and rich and sensual perfume. It's full of paradoxes. It comes in a beautiful stupa-inspired bottle designed by Raymond Guerlain, another member of the family Guerlain. And it was designed and created for the 1925 exhibition in Paris. It was a masterpiece, and the name Shalimar is coming from the gardens of Shalimar, which is Sanskrit for Temple of Love. These gardens are located in Lahore, in India, and they provided a backdrop for the 17th century love affair between the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan and his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal. After her death, Shah Jahan had the Taj Mahal built near Agra as her mausoleum. So you see, still today, you can visit this beautiful place, the Taj Mahal, and Shalimar is a love story in a bottle. So very, very important perfume still today. And next year, in 1925, we will have the 1 century birthday of this perfume. You can imagine, 100 years.
100 years.
Perfume, it's amazing.
Yes.
And to give you, to speak with a few words about François Coty. François Coty's arrival on the scene at the beginning of the 20th century. And it was a very important step with him because he was an extraordinary man with a burning ambition, an exceptional nose, and great organizational skills. But he is considered still today as the father of the modern industry. He invented a lot of what we're still doing today in terms of marketing, in terms of olfactory, landscape, distribution, advertising, and export trade. He was what you called an American self-made man, and he defined himself like that. And in fact, he was the first to use synthetic raw materials in such a large quantity. He was not the first one to use synthetic materials, but the first in such large quantity, because he wanted to make the luxury accessible for everyone, quite everyone. I mean, the middle class. And to reach that, he understood that with the raw materials, he could create an art of perfumery, but not as expensive as only natural ingredients. And it was very clever, a very clever strategy, because in the same time, he founded the modern olfactory families. And that's very important point, because today we need all these olfactory families as François Coty imagines themselves. And one and last, because we can speak a lot about François Coty, he is such an amazing man. But
Élisabeth, was François Coty the one that introduced the fragrances for men, or was that before or after? Sorry.
No, it was before. It was before.
It was before. Okay.
Yes,
okay,
it was before, but he was very at the beginning of the democratization of perfumery. And he had a very clever idea, because he decided to create more perfume for everybody, he knew that the bottle is very important. Before it was not the same because it was a little market. So the bottle of perfumes was not so important as a brand bottle. But François Coty understood that the brand is very important and that the bottle is what a consumer see for the first, at first. At first, what do you see? The bottle. And then you smell. And the bottle must indicate what you smell, what you will smell. And that was very, very clever. And also he started to work in collaboration with René Lalique, for example, and he created beautiful bottles of perfumes that still today are very expensive in auction. It's one of the most beautiful bottles of the history of perfumery.
And we continue to see his name and his brand, you know, Coty,
Yes, Coty.
in many ways.
Exactly. He was one of the first to settle in the American market. And also today, because he did a failure before the Second World War, but today it's Coty Inc., which continues the empire of François Coty. He died just before the Second World War, but his heritage is absolutely huge.
It's still alive. It's still alive.
Yeah, it's still alive.
And a little bit,
still alive. For example, the Chypre, you see the Chypre family.
Yes.
He created the modern way of the Chypre family in 1970. And before, of course, some Chypre accord did exist, but not in this modern way as we still doing today.
Okay.
And to finish with Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, with Chanel and Chanel #5. Why #5? I mean, why Chanel? It was also created in 1921, I believe, to 1922.
Yes, Chanel was created in 1921.
Top seller in the market. So tell us a little bit about Marilyn Monroe and how she related herself to this fragrance, and she became so iconic with
yes,
with her image.
And exactly when Chanel created #5 in 1921, she wanted to create a winning formula. She said, I want to create a perfume for women that smells like a woman. And also, when in 1952, Marilyn Monroe declared, I lose my sense of smell without it. And when she said that, when she was asked, and she answered that she wore in the morning only, and she only wore a drop of #5 during the night, just a few drops of #5. And she said that the truth, it was a free publicity and it worked magic. Of course, Gabrielle Chanel, who was still alive, must have been delighted by this free publicity and possibly amused by it. Both women had perfected the art of seduction, so Marilyn Monroe's spontaneous comment tied in nicely with this image, you see, as did the photos of her clasping a bottle of #5, a marvel of grace and sensibility and sensuality, just like the soul, enhancing properties of the perfume itself. And also you can imagine the impact of this declaration of Marilyn Monroe, of this picture, which was a free publicity. Every woman wanted to become as Marilyn Monroe, thanks to a few drops of number 5. And I can imagine that all the men wanted to give number 5 to their beloved woman to transform them into Marilyn Monroe. And men could have the feeling to have Marilyn Monroe in their arms. So it's a perfect publicity. And it's very clever because with these few words, Marilyn Monroe did the best summary of what a perfume is. You see,
Yes.
double eye, a concentrate of seduction, of dream, of sensuality, of happiness. Because in a way, when she declared that she sleeps with only a few drops of number 5, it means that, of course, she is nude, but that she didn't need a man in her bed. She didn't mean anything else. Alone and happy, you see. So it's very strong.
Yes, with a few drops only.
Exactly, with a few drops.
Exactly. Now,
with a few drops, you can be happy.
I am sure that if she could have had her own perfumer, I think she would have chosen to have it as Marie Antoinette. Back then in Versailles, you know, this beautiful castle that was constructed in 1661. And of course, scents around this castle played a very important role because they added a touch of elegance and sophistication. And I would really love to hear from you, like some of those stories in that beautiful castle related to fragrances and how Marie Antoinette, you know, she had her own perfumer, and how does Jean-Louis Fargeon, who was her perfumer, became a perfumer of such a young queen. So if you can tell us, you know, in a few minutes, the Louis XIV, the Sun King, le Roi Soleil, and how he also, you know, had this, you know, need or the willingness to have a perfumer, you know, for Marie Antoinette. I'm sure Marilyn Monroe would have loved to have it. She didn't, but she had Chanel number 5. So
yes.
Yes.
You're right. The construction of the Palace of Versailles began in 1661, but you have to keep in mind that each day between 3,000 and 10,000 people flocked to Versailles, but sanitary facilities were rudimentary and perfumes were used primarily for hygiene and medical purposes. That said, their scent did add a touch of elegance and sophistication, because you can imagine the smell in the chateau without commodities. So it was asked by the king to wear a perfume each day to present yourself in front of the king. But it was for a hygiene question, really. It was very necessary. And at the time of Louis XIV, the perfumery was considered as an art activity, as an art craft activity, exactly. And so it was a very noble art craft activity, and perfumers were full of privileges, and were dedicated to great personage of the court. And that's why when Marie Antoinette arrived in Versailles, she wanted to have her own perfumer. And she was a very pretty young queen, She had some habits very different than the other people of her time. For example, she took a bath several times a week. It was not common at this time. She was
So
very
it was not every day, so more than once a
no,
week.
not every day, but many times in the week.
Okay.
And that was for the time of Marie Antoinette, it means a lot. You see, people were not used to bath and to take a bath. And also, Marie Antoinette loved fresh smells because she didn't use to hide her bad smells under a perfume. She preferred to enhance her skin smell thanks to a perfume. And also she asked to Jean-Louis Fargeon, who was an heir of a very brilliant dynasty of perfumers, originally from Montpellier in the south of France.
Mm-hmm.
And he arrived in Paris at the end of the reign of Louis XV. First, he becomes a supplier of the Comtesse du Barry, who was the last mistress of Louis XV. And then, of course, he became the perfumer of Marie Antoinette. And he collaborated with both her hairdresser, Leonard, supplying him with floral oils and jasmine-scented hair pomades, and her dressmaker, the famous Rose Bertin, perfuming the fabric flowers, and also he became a very important member of the court of Versailles. He's a very interesting personage of the history of perfumery, because Jean-Louis Fargeon set out to improve the distillation technique. He now began using water distillation, distilling the raw materials several times, and then separating the essential oils from the distilled water to obtain what were called ardent spirits. He improved the enfleurage, process developed in the city of Grasse, and he wrote a book of perfumery. And in this book, he wrote that the main progresses in perfumery will come from the chemistry, from the artificial notes. And it is really amazing, because it is 1 century before the first applications of the chemistry to the industry of perfumery. So he's very a visionary artist, and a very very romantic personage. His life is really like a novel. So it's a true story, but a very, very romantic one.
Yes, and the perfumers, I think every life of a perfumer is like a novel. I have worked with many perfumers in my professional life, and they are artists. And in the past, we thought they would have, the dress. Can you go to the next slide, please? Would be something like that, which of course it's not we cannot imagine a perfumer walking with all the little bottles and everything, but it was the image that perfumers had in the history. And I also saw that in your book, and I read it, that the perfumery language, first is the perfumer, which is, they are artists. They are the ones that really put all the raw materials together in order for these raw materials to become a harmony and smell terrific, in our hands, in our body, in our homes. And I know that they have a way to describe these fragrances. They have families, like you mentioned, the Fougère family, or you
Yes.
mentioned other families in your conversation. So tell us a little bit more about the perfumer, and how they classify the raw materials and blend them together. And it's really a métier that it's pretty long. I mean, the perfumers need many years to really learn how to create fragrances, and it's related to science, but it's also very much related to art. So tell us
Exactly.
about that.
Exactly. That's very interesting, this picture, because in a side you have an ancient perfumer coming from the court of the king in the 18th century. And on the other side, you have the olfactory tree, because we need to create a classification of the natural olfactory raw materials and the synthetic raw materials. And since the beginning, the art of a perfumer is really a very hard work. With the Egyptians, as you can understand, the first perfumers were the priests, who were doctors as well. And always the perfumery, the art of perfumery, was linked to the science. A religion, of course, but then the science, medicine, chemistry. But it's a very serious trade. It's not only art, it's really a long, very long formation. And for example, at the time of the kings, and you have the example with this ancient perfumer, after the guild of Glover perfumers, there was a very long formation to become a master of perfumer. More than 8 years. For example, Jean-Louis Fargeau studied during 8 years to become a perfumer.
Master perfumer.
Yes, a master perfumer. And today it's the same. We have some perfume schools who came on the scene in the 50s. And you have, of course, several ways to learn how to have school. One of the most famous is the ISIPCA in Versailles. But you have some schools in Grasse. And we need a perfumer needs many, many years to learn and to remember all the scents in the nature, but the artificial scent in the same, and to understand the rules of the creation of a perfume.
And artificial scent, when you say that, Élisabeth, it's not, some people think that artificial might not be as good as natural, but I know that in perfumery, it's not at all, what it is. So tell us a little bit more about this artificial versus natural, and how using artificial, we really protect nature as well, right?
Exactly. At the end of the 19th century, perfumers found the first applications to the synthetic to the art of perfumery. With artificial note, you have the name art. And before the artificial note, a perfumer could create only during the season of the natural flowers or citrus, and also it was not so large, you see, for the creation. And thanks to the artificial, we have stability, we have more it's difficult to me to explain it in English, but the synthetic is not bad and the natural good. And thanks to the synthetic, we can protect the nature because we can reproduce the exact smell, this exact natural smell of a flower or of a wood, thanks to the chemistry. So it's amazing. It's really amazing, synthetic, and it's not bad for the health. We have to forget this idea and to consider that a perfume needs to be created with artificial and natural raw materials. That's very
Yes.
important.
And there's also a lot of talented people who are recreating the smell of nature, which also takes years and a lot of knowledge. So we are
Yes.
really arriving at the end of the interview, Élisabeth. This is not the first book you write. I know this is the third book, and each one of them, I think it's a jewel. I have this book that we just talked about, and I'm really hoping to get the other two. And you wrote the Arbonium of Marie Antoinette, so you really took a deep dive into her life, and A Scented Palace. And will you write a new book in the future? How do you see, the fragrance impacting our lives in the future? And my very last question is, I know that your grandmother played a very important role in your career. So what smell makes you think about her? So let's go one by one. Are you planning to write another book?
Yes, yes. To tell you a secret, I'm writing.
Secrets.
Yes, I am writing a new book, which should be released in March. I hope so, because all this day I was writing, like running, you see. And this book will talk about women and perfume, love, power of seduction, desire, and eroticism. So it's a large topics, but also as I hope that this book will be enjoyed by many people. And I created my own brand of perfumes, and I recreate in a modern way some perfumes from the French art of living. And a new range of scented candles will also be released very soon and be distributed on our e-shop. And to finish with my grandmother, yes, she was very important in my life. She grew up in Tunisia, and then she lived in France after her marriage. But her heart was still in Tunisia, and she used a lot of spices by cooking, and especially the orange blossom water. And she used a few drops of orange blossom waters in when she cooked chocolate cake. And to me, chocolate cake and orange blossom water is just amazing. It's just what I like. It's like a Madeleine of Proust. And I like all perfumes with orange blossom. I like them because it's all my childhood, close to my grandmother. And she is now dead, of course,
But I'm sure that when you close your eyes
yes,
and you smell it, you just see her in front of you. Élisabeth,
yes.
thank you so much. You left us with so much information on the Temple of Love. You made me think of Shalimar when I began my career in France. It was one of the first fragrances I smelled and learned to recognize how to seduce the gods or, anybody, how fragrances are really eternal in our lives, and also learned more about Marie Antoinette beauty routine. So thank you so much for sharing everything that went to write this beautiful book and the other two. We are looking very much forward to seeing the new book in 2025, and hopefully one day we can meet in person. It was really a pleasure.
I
We-
hope so. I would like to finish just very
Yes.
quickly with a quote of an American philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote, "Happiness is a perfume you cannot pour on others without getting some on yourself." So to me, it's a very, very important quote because as a psychosensory object in a society on the move, perfume can provide us with some answers. And the first one is just to be happy.
Just to be happy, ourselves and everybody that is in our lives.
Yeah. Just
Thank
to
you.
be happy and just to be happy and to be yourself.
And to smell good.
And to smell good, of course. Of course.
I really thank the Alliance Française for having invited me to this interview. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I still have some pages that I need to read in your book. And thank you so much. I don't know if somebody from the Alliance wants to say something.
I would like to thank Rebeca. I would like to thank Élisabeth. Melissa and I are looking in the chat right now, and people were absolutely it's so thrilled with this presentation. Janie says, c'était génial. J'aurais dû pu écouter pendant encore de nombreuses heures. So everyone has been so engaged in this presentation. I don't think we have any questions because I think people would just learn so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for this incredible presentation. And Élisabeth, please share the title of your new book when you can. I hope everybody buys a copy of this book. It's incredible. And thank you so much for welcoming you back.
Thank you. Thank you. I was so happy to, and it's an honor for me, really, to be. And thank you, Rebeca. You're an amazing expert, and it's fabulous. It was fabulous to speak with you. So thank you to everybody.
Bonne soirée.
And bonne soirée. Yes, I will have to go to bed now because it's very
late.
it's late in France. But I was so happy. Thank you. Thank you, really. Bye-bye.